we're kind of keying in on some of the places we e-scouted online and see if we can find a wallow. You need to come in and see. Animals have been in here tracking it up. Perfect indicator that this was used during the rut, and you'll definitely want to come back here in September. I'm Josh Boyd. I'm a hydrologist with the United States Forest Service. I've been working in and around streams and springs and wetlands for the past 25 years. And I'm going to talk a little bit about e-scouting for wallows and how to find them on the landscape. Once you have an idea of where you're going to be hunting in the fall, you want to get in your map and start looking for key indicators of where wallows might occur. You want to look for the blue lines on your topo maps and the very top end of those blue lines. You also want to look at these little side basins where a wallow might occur where there isn't a blue line. And then you also want to start to look for some vegetation on the aerial imagery in your mapping software, such as wet, green, very lush vegetations. So wallows tend to occur where springs push groundwater out to the surface. And a lot of times those are at a break in the slope on the mountainside. So you will see a steeper slope come down and a flat spot that kind of occurs and transitioned into like more of a little bench. And that's a prime spot where elk will tend to go and paw out a little hole to wallow in for the heat of the rut. The other thing you want to look for in these side basins where there aren't any blue lines on your topo map would be the same characteristics, but it's flat spots at the bottom of a steeper slope, but also the vegetation change. You'll see very green brush and shrubs and even small deciduous trees sort of growing. Willows, cottonwoods, sometimes aspen patches. They tend to grow in these wet spots. And you can see here on my map that there's one of these drainages that has a break in the slope. It's where two draws kind of come together, and you can see this vegetation has changed and it's very green, very lush. You really need to go validate it on the ground at some point to see if there are wallows in the area. But this just gives you a rough idea of where you can start looking. So this is the first time I've ever been in this area. I've looked at the map. I've identified a few of these characteristics, like the blue lines and the changes in the slopes, and I've dropped some waypoints on the map. And now we're going to go out into the field and actually verify whether or not they exist on the landscape, and then see if the elk have been using them in the past, if they do exist. So here we are, we're out in kind of an unhunted area. I've never been here before. We're kind of keying in on some of the places we e-scouted online, looking at the key features of, the blue lines on the topo maps, where springs might be, also looking at the change in the slope in these little draws, and the other thing is looking at the old green vegetation compared to the dry vegetation on the side. So yeah, here we have groundwater seeping out of this steeper hillside into this little flat spot, and we've got these little terraces. They come down, and you can see animals have been in here tracking it up. I don't see anything like pawed out as like it was used a lot last year, but you'll see we've got this sedgy vegetation coming in. Good indicator that there's groundwater in here and it's kind of a wetland. And that vegetation goes all the way down to that aspen patch. So there's a good chance that there's a wallow below us on this next little step down, or even down closer to that aspen. So this is a great example of a wallow that was probably used last season. It's kind of filled in a little bit with this spongy sediment, but elk will definitely come in here and paw this out as the season gets closer. We have the groundwater seeping out of this steeper bank. It's on a little flat bench, and the elk key in on that, and they'll come in here, they'll drink, but they'll also paw it out and roll around in it. Look around for past use of rutting activity. So if you can locate some rubs nearby, you know elk not only come here and utilize it, they come here and utilize it during the rut. So sometimes you'll come into sites where you think you're going to see a spring or a wallow and it just doesn't exist. Or it might exist on your aerial imagery that was captured in July, but they might be dry come September. You need to come in and see, okay, will this actually be here in September? Because just think of these basins as catchments. They catch water and they route the water downhill. Then they start to dry up first uphill, and then they stay wet further down the valley as you go. But if you can find a spot that like this that has water here plus rubs nearby, more than likely it's going to be active during the rut and the dry season. So here we are next to the wallow we just located. We've got this really wet, sedgy meadow wetland complex. But nearby we've got these aspen that have been rubbed from last season. As I look down this aspen stand, I see rub, 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 rub. Perfect indicator that this was used during the rut, and you'll definitely want to come back here in September. Well, I hope this was helpful in you being able to e-scout for wallows and that you have a successful hunt this fall.